Now, let's clear up some of the confusion about this plant. I'm just curious. Check this out. See what temperature it is. You should never harvest something to eat if you don't know what it is. Ever. Took a couple of them out. Here's one here. I think it's made it. Good morning and welcome to Willow's Green Permaculture. Today is part 2 of the ground cherry video, the Cape gooseberry video. There were so many questions in the previous videos and so many things that people wanted to see. I'm going to talk about all those questions about, is this poisonous? Is it not poisonous? Is this a ground cherry? Is this not a ground cherry? About how you identify plants and the things you need to be careful about. And we're going to be making some jam from these guys that I've had in my freezer. Now I've got about 3.5 jars like this, and I'm going to taste the jam. For pectin, I'm going to be using the quince paste that I made in the video in September. You can use lemon juice or lemon pith or lemon peel, but I'm going to be using this quince paste. This is pure quince with a little bit of water and some sugar. That's it. That's all there is here. That's going to be my pectin for the jam. It's so good. So if that's something you're interested in, then let's get started. Now, let's clear up some of the confusion about this plant. Ground cherry, what we call ground cherry here, and many people call Cape gooseberries, they're almost the same plant, but they're not quite the same plant. What we call ground cherries here is Physalis pruinosa, and it's almost the same plant as Cape gooseberry, which is Physalis peruviana, meaning it comes from Peru. But so does the other one, so does the pruinosa. They both come from Peru. All the Physalis comes from Peru. And some people were confusing them with tomatillo, which is also sometimes called mil tomate, tomatillo. That is Physalis ixocarpa or Physalis philadelphica. There are a couple of varieties. They're in the same family, they're all Physalis, but tomatillo doesn't taste anything like the ground cherry or anything like the Cape gooseberry. The tomatillo isn't sweet. It's really vegetable Physalis, whereas Cape gooseberry and ground cherry are a real fruit Physalis. But they're all Physalis, and some people confuse them with Chinese lanterns, which are also very, very similar. Alcakengi officinalis. However, the Cape gooseberry, the ground cherry, the tomatillo, and the Chinese lantern, they're all in the tomato family. And so another discussion that came up very often was many people thinking this plant is poisonous, that the ground cherry or the Cape gooseberry or even the Chinese lantern are poisonous. But here's what you have to know. They are no more poisonous than a regular tomato. They're all in the tomato family. All the Physalis is in the tomato family. And like tomatoes, you don't eat them green. You don't eat a tomato green. I realize that fried green tomatoes are a thing, but I wouldn't eat fried green tomatoes because I don't eat green tomatoes. You don't eat green tomatoes, they'll make you sick. Okay, for instance, these are my last tomatoes. The yellow pear tomatoes, one of my favorites. I've had the same seeds since 1990. You know, the same tomatoes that I've been growing year after year. And if you look at them, they're a yellow pear tomato. But this one here, you see, it's still green. I'm not going to eat this. Make me sick. Okay, you don't eat a green tomato because the tomatoes are in the solanaceae family and they've got solanin or something like that in them when they're green, and it's in the leaves and it's in the stems and it's in the green fruit. That's why you don't eat tomato leaves and you don't eat tomato stems, because they've got that in them, and you're not going to eat the green fruit either. For the same reason, you don't eat green ground cherries, you don't eat green gooseberries, you don't eat green Chinese lanterns, even tomatillos. When they are ripe, they are no longer green. They're either white or yellow or purple, or a combination of all three when they're ripe. You don't eat tomatillos when they're green either. Don't eat tomato family green. And even potatoes. Why do we mulch potatoes? Because often the potatoes grow very, very close to the surface. And so you gotta mulch them, because if they're too close to the surface, they're gonna get sun exposure and they're gonna start to turn green. The skin's gonna turn green, the flesh inside is gonna turn green. Green potato, you don't eat. For the same reason you don't eat a green tomato. You don't eat a green ground cherry, and you don't eat a green gooseberry. Don't eat a green, or you don't eat a green Chinese lantern. They'll all make you sick. Don't eat them green. Potato, you see, is also in the tomato family. Same big family. Eggplant as well. Same big family. The only exception to this rule, I would say, is pepper. Peppers you can eat green. Now, the other thing is, the Physalis grows all over the world and in so many varieties. And so there were a lot of comments about, wow, this grows in the ditch here, this grows in the fields here, and when I was a kid it was growing everywhere and so on, and we didn't know what it was. And that's normal. And it's normal to be careful about what you're not familiar with. And in the last I'd say since about the 1950s or maybe 60s, we've begun to forget what grows around us. But now people are starting to rediscover what grows around them, and that's really, really important. But it's normal to be wary about what you're not familiar with. You should never harvest something to eat if you don't know what it is. Ever. You need to know what you're harvesting. You need to be able to identify it. And this is one of the reasons why I do my videos, because I believe that we all of us, we all have the potential capacity to be able to identify plants. And I'll do a plant identification video to show you what you need to look for when distinguishing plants. You know, for instance, the shape of the leaf, the outline of the leaf, the shape of it, the stems. Are the stems hairy? Are they smooth? Is the leaf hairy? Is it smooth? For instance, I've got here some native ground cherries that I'm drying right here. You see, they're very different. Very, very different from the regular garden variety ground cherries. These are Physalis heterophylla, clammy ground cherries, and the leaves are hairy, the stems are hairy, and the shells are a different color. They're elongated and so on. Very beautiful plant, and they grow back. The plant doesn't die in the wintertime. Obviously the top dies back, but the roots stay alive. So I believe that we all have this capacity. You know, it shows through in different ways. People have different interests. Some people, you like to collect stones or gems or something like that. Some people like to, some people like art. Some people like cars. Some people like clothes. And how do they distinguish between them? Well, the colors, the shapes, the textures, so many different details, the designs, the weight, the feel, whatever. And so everybody kind of has a taste for something. And I believe that one of the things that comes from is the fact that we all, in our past, in our deep past, well, we were identifying plants for survival. We were hunter-gatherers. We needed to identify plants in order to survive, in order to live. And we still all have that in us. We still all have that in us. And so it's important to learn how to identify plants. And it's also important to be wary about something you're not familiar with. I am grateful for all those people who brought up those comments about the question about, is this poisonous or not? Because it's a very important discussion to have. But ground cherries, Cape gooseberries, Chinese lanterns, tomatillos, they're not poisonous. Like the tomato, you don't eat them green. They'll make you sick if you eat them green. You gotta wait till they're completely ripe. And in the case of the ground cherries, that means completely yellow. So now that we got a whole bunch of ripe frozen ground cherries, let's make some jam. Took a couple of them out. Here's one here. Oh, that's good because it's been frozen. It's like a mix of pineapple and orange and mango, even after frozen like this. But that's what happens. Frozen fruit, it brings out the sweetness. Like cooking. Getting my jars ready. I also like to throw my ladle in there and also the funnel to make sure they get sterilized too. Here are the ingredients. About 3 liters or 3 quarts of ground cherries. Some quince paste. This is the equivalent of, let's say, 1 whole lemon, which is what I would have done in the past before I had quince. For this amount of ground cherries, I would have used 1 whole lemon. All the peel, all the pith, all the juice. I've also got here a cup of sugar and of course water. So ingredients, ground cherries, water, quince, and sugar. And that's it. I like to put them in frozen to make sure I get all the juice, so none of the juice stays in the jars. They'll defrost real fast. There we go. Now as we start to heat this up, don't want to burn the fruit, so you want to just cover it in water, because we're making jam, so you don't want it watery. You want to use just enough water just to cover it up. They have something to boil in. Not putting the quince in yet. We'll wait till they've started to cook. So they're just barely covered in water. I'm going to turn the heat on and make sure that I mix them well so they don't burn on the bottom. Heat on, add a little bit of water because they're quite covered. When they start to heat up, they're going to release all their juice, and so it's going to be more liquid in here. And if I feel I need more liquid later, then I'll just add some more. Jars are already over here. So while this starts to heat up, I'm going to get these jars out of here. I brought this water to boiling. I'm always going to come back to this, check it. I do this jam whole, the skins and everything. All that good stuff. And the seeds, actually, I didn't show you the seeds. I'm drying some seeds here. You can see they're really, really small. So these are to plant next year if I want to have them growing somewhere else that I haven't grown them before. This is how I dry all my tomato seeds. Anything like that, like any juicy fruit with small seeds, I'll just spread them out on a piece of paper and let them dry. As you can see, now there's a lot of water in there already. They're going to take a few minutes to boil because, of course, they were frozen. I'm going to use this to crush them a little. Get the juice out faster. You know, I think I always put too much water in at the beginning, especially with ground cherries. They're so small, they release their juice really fast. It's been a couple minutes, it's starting to boil. Well, it's starting to heat up anyway. And I'm already starting to smell that real sweetness that comes out when you cook these guys. So I'm just going to taste one of these hot like this. Yeah, just a little bit more sweetness coming out. Really nice. More of a pineapple orange flavor. As soon as these start to boil, I'm gonna add the quince. Then we'll see how sweet the quince makes it, because the quince was already sweet and already had sugar in it as well. And if I have to add more sugar, then I will afterwards only. It's coming along. It's now boiling. Now we're gonna add the quince paste. So this is probably gonna change the color. I love this quince paste. I see the quince is all melted into there, which means its sweetness should be all mixed throughout. So now I'm going to taste some of this. Yeah, now it's boiling real well. I used an extra large pot so I could let it boil and I don't have to worry about overflowing the pot. Don't have to worry about any overflowing jam. When your jam overflows all over the sides of the pot, all over the stove, you lose all your jam. That's no fun. That's happened to me enough times. Don't need it to happen again. Now, sometimes I use a thermometer. It's got a little indicator of when you've reached jam level. Okay, let's taste some of this. We're going to taste this. I like to use a real long wooden spoon so I'm not burning my hands when I'm mixing. Actually, I'm going to put this in the fridge. So I'm not sure if I've used enough quince. That's all the quince that I had prepared. I have more whole quince in the freezer. I could have cut up a whole quince and thrown it in here. However, if this isn't thick enough, that's what I'll do next time. Okay, let's taste this. Very nice. Add that pineapple orange flavor, but I'd like it thicker. That quince paste, I don't think I put enough in, so I'm gonna add sugar. So we had about 3 liters or 3 quarts of ground cherries, and this is 1 cup, actually a bit more than a full cup of sugar, because I can't see the line under there, but it's probably about 1 1/4 cups of sugar. Normally, when I make fruit jam, I will put 40% sugar, which in the case of 3 quarts or 3 liters, 40% would be almost 5 cups of sugar. So I might put more. That quince paste is probably the equivalent of at least a cup of sugar, I would think. So this doubles it to 2 cups, or two and a bit. Oh, I'm thinking that's gotta be enough. Boil it, and then we'll test it again. If it's not enough, add some more. The thing is, I don't like to have too much sugar. And so often I'm not going for an actual thick jam or a jelly. What I'm going for more is like what we call in French, une coulis, which means something that flows. In other words, a sauce. Going for a thick sauce rather than a jam. Okay, this is boiling. Okay, taste test. It's been in the fridge for a minute or 2. That's sweet enough. I don't want more sugar than that. So just over a cup of sugar was enough, and then whatever sugar was in that quince paste. So I think this is almost ready. Like I said, I don't really care if it's not a jelly. I just want it to preserve, last in the cupboard. I let it boil down for about 5 more minutes. Look at that boiling. You know, I'm realizing while I'm waiting for this to boil that I think one of the reasons for some of the confusion in that short ground cherry video from this past week was the jingle we used for Willow's Green Permaculture at the beginning of all of our video. It shows an image of a tomatillo. I love the plant of the tomatillo. I think it's one of the most beautiful plants in the tomato family, and the little husk when it starts to grow. So it's in our jingle. And so people who are new to our channel who watched that video, they might have thought that the image in the jingle was part of the video, and that was what we were talking about. I just realized that now. Okay, I'm just curious. I'm gonna check this out, see what temperature it is. Don't wear my glasses because otherwise I can't read the thermometer. Okay, according to this, we are at about 219 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 103 degrees Celsius. We're just below the jam line. I'm gonna take the camera down and show you this, because the way it's boiling right now tells me that it's almost a jam. The way the bubbles are going. You see how those bubbles are like really, you can tell there's a lot of thickness to them. There's a ton of bubbles. It looks almost like there's a film on top of the jam. That's when I can tell that it's reached a jam thickness or a jam temperature or consistency. It's a different type of bubble. I don't really know how to explain it. Maybe one of you can explain it for me. This look of the bubbles. Let me mix it. And here's another mystery. I don't know why when I stick the wooden spoon in, it makes the bubbles go crazy like that. Maybe someone can explain that for me too. There we go. Let's have a look. There we go. See that? Just below that jam line. You see the word jam on the right there? I think it's made it. Okay, good enough. One last mix. Make sure it doesn't burn on the bottom. I've done that enough times when it just reaches. Oops. Okay, it's jumping out of the pot. It's ready. Ouch! I just got some on my hand. It's ready. Okay, let's turn this off. So it's ready. Look at that color. It's nice. That's a nice color, and it's probably going to be even darker now. As you can see, the fruit is all kind of all flattened and everything. This is nice. That orange pineapple flavor. This is, I gotta say, one of my favorite jam. Now we're gonna fill our jars. I throw these into the boiling water for about 15 seconds. Let's get these jars filled. Just below the top. And we started with probably just under 3 liters or just under 3 quarts of ground cherries. Let's see how many it actually gives us. These on, 15 seconds in the boiling water. The lid's on, not too tight. Finger tight, as they say. Now, I'm gonna stick them into the boiling water, turn the water back on, and get these things canned. Normally for this quantity, I would never have used this huge pot of water, but I just got all this stuff out for the video. But normally, if I'm gonna get this pot out, it's because I'm gonna make about a dozen of those jars in there. So I'm just gonna let this come back to a boil, and then just turn the temperature down, let the water continue boiling, simmer, let them stay in there for about 20 minutes, and then they will be ready. I'll let them cool down. They'll be able to be kept in the cupboard for at least a year. And we'll do the taste test on this. So it's been 20 minutes. Let's take these out. That's what the jam looks like. As you can see, it's become a lot darker from the quince, from the sugar, and also just from the ground cherries. When was it on? This was on crooked. So now it's time to taste it. I'm just waiting for some of our sorghum toast to be ready. But before I do that, I'd just like to mention, obviously it's December, so I couldn't do a video really about growing ground cherries, although I would have loved to have done it. But for those of you who are curious, I will do a video in March at the same time as I do one on peppers, because growing ground cherries from seed, you start them just like you would start peppers. There's a little advanced tip on how you grow ground cherry. You grow a bit like you would peppers. This is some of our sorghum bread, yogurt, I got peanut butter. Grown peanuts before, but never enough to make my own like jars of peanut butter. I'd love to grow enough peanuts to be able to make my own peanut butter for a whole year, maybe one day. All right, now it's still warm, but it's more like a sauce than a jam. Maybe as it cools, it will become more like a jam, but I don't really care. It's my breakfast. Now I'm gonna taste some. Like I said, it's still hot. Here goes. Yeah, to me, the flavor comes out so much more in jam. It's got the same flavor as when it's raw. That orangey pineapple flavor. But when it's in a jam, it's more pronounced. It's more concentrated, you saw. I started off with 3 liters or 3 quarts and got 1.5 liters or 1.25 liters. So, concentrated flavor. Sorghum toast, ground cherry jam with quince paste. Bon appetit. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it useful. Hope you learned something from it. If you liked it, then please give it a thumbs up and please share it with your friends. That really helps us a lot when you share videos, when you like them. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to comment. I really like to answer the questions, and so far I've been able to answer them all. And if you haven't done so yet, then subscribe to our channel. Support what we do here just by subscribing, and if you want to hit that notification button, then go right ahead. That way you can see all the videos that are coming up. So have a great week, have a great holiday season, and we will see you next time. The sun setting through the Virgin's Bower.